Hey, everybody, welcome to Fictionology. This is Gideon,
And this is Bardicans.
and we're coming to you live from the oft mentioned quarantine bunker, riding out the COVID season in style and seclusion and depression, clinical depression, I think, at this point.
Seems like it, right? And
Yeah,
also it's cold. so
quite, quite cold. Apparently, like there are seasons. Apparently, the temperature changes throughout the year. Now, I wouldn't remember. Like that's a piece of trivia I had to remind myself about since going outside has not been a thing here lately.
hmm
But apparently, did you know that the climate changes and the temperature changes?
I heard rumors.
Yeah,
But since I spent a good portion of the last few years in a tropical environment, I didn't know if it was true.
so you're really coming to us from an ice cube, and you're part of
That's
the
right.
bunker. Yeah.
That's right.
Well,
I'm
hopefully
freezing
some
right now.
hopefully some scintillating conversation will help thaw you. Get the creative juices going, maybe get the heart pumping a bit, and it'll
Eh.
thaw you. Yeah, probably not. Well, guys, guys and gals, all 11 of you who very loyally listen to what we have to say. We've mentioned over the last few months that we were going to bring to you some non-Star Wars related content, and we've done that a bit with Bardican's Crusader Kings, uh, his journey and walkthrough in that, and I think another game is coming your way, um, and we decided to follow through with this with on something I'm really excited about, which is my all-time favorite television show, and one that I think is near and dear to Bardican's heart too, which is the supernatural drama Angel spinoff of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, created by Joss Whedon and David Greenwalt.
hmm
Um, this is my all-time favorite, man, as you well know.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember us watching it as kids together. A lot. I haven't watched the whole thing all the way through in a long time, but it still is one of my favorite shows,
Yeah,
and definitely deserves a rewatch.
yeah, criminally underrated.
hmm
It's one of those things that never, Angel never earned Buffy's pop culture reputation, and Buffy, rightly so, is a pop culture phenomenon. Even though I consider it, all things considered, to be the inferior show in terms of
hmm
quality. Buffy is given its due. I mean, it radically changed television. Before Game of Thrones and Lost, Joss Whedon was really popularized the killing character trope. Now he didn't do it with abandon. It wasn't like he was slaughtering main characters every episode or every other
Sure.
episode. In fact, I would argue Joss was very much more strategic about it because and we'll get into that as it goes on. But I mean, you can he knew he and the writers that he employed had a very good sense of when to when to sound the trumpets, when to let the hopeful music swell, and it was really emotional and really take you places. But he also knew when to pull the rug out from under you, and drop you into the pits of despair. And it was never, I would argue, it very rarely, if ever, towed into the line of darkness induced apathy or grim
Uh huh.
darkness or anything like that. And he was hilarious. I mean, the show is so funny.
It really is. That's one of
I
the biggest points for me. Is the humor.
Yeah, I think the comedy really stands up to like actual full length comedies, in sitcoms and things like that. I mean, like there are many scenes and sequences throughout the 5 seasons of the show that are like real knee slappers. You know what I mean? And you
Yeah.
could like laugh to you cry. Um, but yeah, it's my all time favorite. It never got the reputation of Buffy, and it didn't pioneer things quite to the extent that Buffy did. And in all fairness to Buffy, it just built on the foundation that Buffy created. But I think all things considered, it's the superior show. And for me personally, it's actually Joss Whedon's best work, and that includes Firefly, that includes Serenity, the spinoff movie of Firefly,
hmm
which I think we should also discuss one day. Great movie.
I
And,
agree.
and even the Avengers, the two Avengers movies.
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you there. I really wasn't a big fan of Buffy just because I guess I didn't catch it at the right time of my youth or something. It just never grew on me as much.
Right.
But Angel, I got into immediately, and I could probably rewatch it now with the same enthusiasm that I had then. I just haven't, for whatever reason,
Yeah.
lately.
Yeah, Buffy. So Buffy, Angel lasted 5 seasons. It went from 1999. It aired from 1999 to 2004. Buffy aired 7 seasons between. I think it was 97. It had a truncated 12 episode season, and then the remaining 6 seasons were the standard at the time, the standard 22 episode seasons.
Mm-hmm.
And it spanned from 97 to 2003. So Angel actually went a year longer, and it Angel began its first season, ran parallel to Buffy's fourth, and comparing the two is interesting because obviously, again, they do have a lot of similarities. They share
Sure.
the exact same mythology, they share characters, they have crossover events and stuff like that. But I would argue, and not that Angel is perfect, it is by no means a perfect show. There is no such thing, in my opinion, as a perfect television show. Period. But the peaks and valleys are not nearly as noticeable as Buffy's. Buffy had a decent first season, a great second season, a great third season, a fourth season that was bad, a fifth season that was really good. As it's up there with 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
6 was really bad, and 7 was meh. So it was kind of all over the place. With Angel had a good first season. I think it's better than Buffy's first. A phenomenal second season that's better than Buffy's second season, in my opinion. And Buffy has a great second season. A great third season, which is comparable to Buffy's third season.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Angel's fourth season is much like Buffy's fourth season in that I think they're the weakest seasons of the show, arguably. But Angel's final season is fantastic. It might even be better than the second season. Like, so it goes out on a high note in terms of the season, and I would argue it has the best series finale I've ever seen in terms of the consistency with the show's themes and in a culmination um, of what the characters were going through all the way back in the first season, the first episode of the first season. And I don't want to dive too deeply into that, though. This will obviously involve spoilers, since this episode's kind of an introduction to Angel, and I do want to talk about the first episode a bit. But I think that's part of the reason that Angel's more digestible is its quality is much tighter, and its highs compete with Buffy's highs, but it never gets quite to the same lows as Buffy, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, I think you'd be more of the expert there. I don't think I was able to watch all of Buffy. I did play the video game though,
So
way
did
back
I.
in the day.
In fact, I remember that Xbox official magazine rated it a 9 out of 10, and it was a pretty good game. Um, uh, the sequel, they had a sequel game, Chaos Bleeds. That was not good. It's not good at all.
Yeah.
It was not good at all. In fact, that
So
should
that's
have been
basically
an Angel game, in my opinion.
that's basically the extent of my knowledge about Buffy is a bit of the game and a few episodes here and there. Now I should probably go back and give it another watch, but in time,
Well,
in time.
well, yeah, I don't blame you. I mean, my thing, even with Angel, I could start from episode 1 and go all the way back through. The only difference is it's an hour long, or
Mm-hmm.
45 minutes. So it's not like binge watching a sitcom, which you and I do all the time. Together and separately. Sitcoms are 20-25 minutes. So um, a prime time network TV show like Angel is more of an undertaking, in the sense that each episode's twice the length of a sitcom episode. But and as is the case with Buffy. The other thing is, I think that I don't know. I think I was always drawn more, and I think you probably were too, to Angel's premise, and not just the plot premise, but basically the thematic conceit of the show. So Buffy was in addition to the dialogue and Sarah Michelle Gellar's great performance and the great supporting cast, the great thing about Buffy, the appeal to it is, Buffy was first and foremost conceived as a subversion of the trope, and we're going to put our monocles on because we're talking about trope subversion, and yes, that's also sophisticated. But there, yes, indubitably. But there again, Joss Whedon, much can be said about the man now, and there is some scandal surrounding him now in terms of his much vaunted feminism. Apparently, there have been some like reports about him as a person that would contrast with his history of feminism. And he had, he did the rewrite for the Justice League movie, which was not, it did not save it at all, in my opinion. And his last Avengers outing, Age of Ultron, was mediocre too. So I think that I think Whedon in some context is overrated, but
Sure.
prime Whedon, the guy from Buffy all the way up to Firefly and Angel, he was hard to top, and especially when you consider the rogues galleries of writers that he employed. I mean, there are writers and that I went on to, like, Lost, Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad. I mean, if you look at the writers and directors in some of the all-time greatest Buffy and Angel episodes,
mm-hmm.
and you look at their CV, they went on to direct like some of the best episodes in just fiction, period. I mean, so he definitely, his influence stretches pretty far, even now into the 2020s, with respect to television. But the first idea was an unpretentious subversion of a trope, which was the blonde that goes into the alleyway in a monster movie and gets slaughtered. He conceived Buffy as a twist on that. So the monster chases the blonde in an alley, and then the blonde turns around and kicks its ass and then kills it. That's Buffy. And then from there, the idea was very often Buffy was the monster element was a metaphor for life's challenges, particularly growing up, because she starts as a high school sophomore in the first season, and it carries her all the.
Huh?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
That young, huh?
Yeah,
I didn't realize that.
Now, Sarah Michelle Gellar was 20 at the time, 19 or 20 at the time of filming. But yeah, she was supposed to be. She's 16 years old in the first season, and so she's struggling with a social life and her personal life, but while also putting her actual life, her true life, in danger every day. And the overarching metaphor was growing up, and Angel's premise was different. So if Buffy's premise was about a teen, going from adolescence into adulthood, Angel was conceived at the start from about the complexities and the struggles and the moral ambiguities of adulthood, specifically an adulthood of sins and regrets,
sure.
And how do you atone for that? Is it possible to atone? Is redemption something to strive for? Is it achievable? So it dealt automatically with, I would say, more adult, more weighty ideas, right?
But I think you can see that probably in like the environments and the tonal shift, especially the switch from day to night in a lot of things. The colors darkened.
Yeah, it's very noirish.
Deepened.
Yeah, good call. I mean, that's true. Buffy has a lot of, even though it's a show about vampires and darkness, I mean, a lot of it takes place during the day. And you're right, with Angel, I mean, from the very beginning, I mean, not that you never get outside into the sunlight, but the vast majority of it is spent in darkness.
Right, and generally we're with his perspective of things, which is usually at night, right? So, and it shifts a little bit, but I think that that goes along with the difference in emotion that you can feel, the mood, right?
Yeah, it's very moody compared to Buffy, and again, which is interesting because I would argue it's just as funny and maybe
right.
even
No,
more than Buffy,
I think I think it plays into the fact that it can be brooding, right? He could have this brooding anti-hero, or like,
right.
He's trying to atone for his past sins and everything, but also there's a lot of levity, right? There's a lot of comedy, lightheartedness, but just being out at night is dark and scary, and there are monsters, and it's depressing. Like a lot of the environment is depressing. You
Right.
always got the you always got the steam or the mist coming in
Right.
every.
It's always foggy. He
Yeah,
always
foggy.
finds
Yeah,
that foggy alley. No, you're right. I mean, it is. It's like, he's coming out of like a Twisted Sister concert or something. It's 1989 and he's going on stage, that fog machine. Um,
they pay that
no,
guy a lot to follow him around.
yeah, like, all right, guys, I'm about to turn the corner. Frank, turn on the fog machine. Go ahead. 3, 2, 1. And then the billowing coat and the spiky hair and all that. Yeah. Get the dry ice. If the fog machine's not working, get the dry ice. But yeah, it does. It deals with moodier things and heavier topics, and I just like that. I mean, I don't think more adult is always better. You and I've talked about this before. I think great fiction comes in all sorts of tones,
Sure.
and even grimdark. As much as it's mocked and understandably so, that doesn't mean you can't tell a good grimdark story or good cosmic horror. There's some really interesting, really entertaining cosmic horror out there, and that's the very definition of grimdark.
Sure.
And even Angel itself, I would argue, in a roundabout way, edges there because, as I've said before, villains for me are the a good fantasy story, good fiction story is, in my opinion, defined ultimately by its villain, unless you're getting into non-genre, like The West Wing, which is one of my favorite shows, and Veep, and a lot of the sitcoms we watch. You don't need a great villain there. I mean, because the drama is not about good versus evil. It's purely about the personality conflicts of the central characters. But
And
when
relationships and things like that. Yeah.
right, and you have all that in Angel too, and in a lot of the great,
Mm-hmm.
Game of Thrones, Breaking Bad. But in those things, you need a great villain, and Angel has many. And the one of the big differences between Buffy and Angel is Buffy really, it wasn't the very first, but it really popularized, the trope of the big bad, the seasonal big bad. So in the first season of Buffy, you had the Master, the ancient vampire. In season 2, you had Spike, Drusilla, and a spoiler character. In 3, you had the mayor. I mean, and each one had an expiration date. You crack the can open at the first episode, and by the end of it, you need to dispose of it. And each one represented a specific type of challenge for Buffy, be it the patriarchy, be it just authority in general, be it religious extremism, all these things. But it was pretty much almost always wrapped up in a bow by the end of the season. Now, Angel does have, season 3. You have Holtz, the vampire hunter, who is an incredibly compelling villain. Great villain, easily as complex, if not more complex, than any of Buffy's. And he's there for a season. And you have, some myth arc villains that last for a handful of episodes, not even an entire season. But the arch villain of Angel is the the demonic law firm, a law firm, Wolfram and Hart. And that's the great thing about Angel, just as a sidebar. So it's not like it's not this Angel, for those of you who have not watched it, even though it's a supernatural show, and for those of you who've never seen Buffy, right? One thing to emphasize here is that Angel is campy. Buffy is campy. It deals with a lot of serious things, but it also deals with silly things. And this is not American Horror Story. You know what I mean? This is not The Haunting of Hill House. This is not like a consistently serious, start to finish, scary mind screw. This is a show that blends comedy, drama, action, and it's made in the late 90s and early 2000s. So there's camp, there's silliness, there's
heck of a lot of cheese.
yeah, right, and that's what I mean by campiness. There's a cheese factor, but it blends it. It's not one of those shows that's trying to take itself too seriously and comes out cheesy as a result. It leans in when it is cheesy. It leans into the cheesiness, right?
Yeah.
It's not like it tries for something and then it just like craps the bed in terms of execution. Whedon and Greenwald and the writers they had this really keen sense of when I'm serious, I'm going to nail it. It's going to hit you as hard as any, serious drama you've ever watched in your life. But when I make you laugh, it's going to be uproariously. When a goofy character comes along, it was intended to be goofy from the beginning. The dialogue and the reactions all lean into it. It's just an expert blend of serious and camp,
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And sometimes you get you get the serious moment that's lightened by a little bit of the humor and stuff, right?
Right, or even intentionally undermined. Like, you remember our favorite,
sure.
one of our favorites. Go ahead.
That's something that Joss Whedon does a lot, right?
Yes. Yes, he does. No. I mean, that you're right that they're again subverting the trope. He does this thing where often he'll do a big dramatic buildup and then completely undercut it for irony and for comedic effect.
Cabin in the Woods is a good example, right?
Right, and that was, I think, produced by Joss Whedon and written by, and I can't think of the guy's name, but he was an Angel writer, one of the main Angel writers, and yeah, that has the Whedonisms all over it. But the camp even plays a role in the selection of the big bad, Wolfram and Hart. So Angel takes place in Los Angeles, which in many ways is in it, even though it's obviously a city, right? And it's not anthropomorphized. In many ways, Los Angeles, you could argue, is a character in the show because it's given a lot of personality and attitude, and a lot of time and dialogue throughout all 5 seasons are spent establishing the various real world and fictional elements of Los Angeles. So, in the real world, Los Angeles has a reputation for chewing people up and spitting them out, and it's the city of broken dreams. And, how many of you, have heard of the trope where the young aspiring actress leaves her Midwestern small town and goes to Los Angeles, and she's going to make it big, and then she's waiting tables for 20 years. Or, the same thing for the young athlete, who, I'm going to be the next major sports star and whatever, and I'm going out there, and it just doesn't happen. The ruthlessness and the cutthroat nature of Los Angeles is laced throughout the fictional cosmology, the monster element, the vampire element. And it's also a city of big pricey lawyers, the Johnny Cochrans of the world, and the celebrity attorneys. And so Joss Whedon chose to deviate from the Buffy template and make the overarching villain from season 1 to the end of season 5 a law firm, Wolfram and Hart. And Wolfram and Hart provides a lot of serious drama and also a lot of the humor too, because it's also like a recurring evil lawyer joke. Like everything that Shakespeare and every writer has ever said about attorneys, they lampshade, and unlike Buffy, Angel really emphasizes not just the evil of demons and vampires and ghosts, but the evil of the human heart, and how in many ways is much more powerful. And so I think all of that is just really, really cool. And all of the characters are profoundly flawed. All the main characters.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
I mean, there are no Gary and Mary Sues here. I mean, everybody is as much of a screw up as anything. I mean, you look at Angel himself. This is a character who, Angel, again, for those of you who don't know, is he begins in Buffy. He debuts in the first season of Buffy as kind of this mysterious figure who will give Buffy like tidbits of information and lore and things like that, kind of like a I don't know, like an informant of some kind throughout the first season. And then you find out halfway through the first season he's a vampire. But he's different from other vampires. He's cursed with a soul. In the Buffyverse, vampires are, without exception, from start to finish, creatures of evil. The mythology of Buffy is that when you become a vampire, a demon possesses your body, and it retains your memories, elements of your personality, and certainly your appearance. But your soul, your consciousness is gone. Goes to heaven, hell, wherever. It's just gone. And so it's not like it's you just with a set of fangs. It is a fundamentally different character. Angel is cursed with his soul. So when he was turned into a vampire hundreds of years ago, he was particularly vicious, even among the standard. Like, he was a torturer and a sadist and a manipulator. He didn't just kill people, he destroyed them. And he was cursed as punishment by his soul being returned to him. So his consciousness, his conscience is returned to his body. So Angel is in many ways an amalgamation of the demon that's possessing him and the original host conscience. And the two, it's sometimes hinted that there's like a bipolar alter ego element, and sometimes, it's hinted that the two are like inextricably linked, right? And that they are one, they become one entity. And the mythology goes back and forth a bit with it. And it's kind of interesting. But so when Buffy finds out he's a vampire, at this point, there's naturally sexual tension. And there's a will they, won't they, he's the enemy, but he's also cursed with a soul. And anyway, he becomes an ally of hers. And they fall in love, and there's a lot of drama there. It's the ultimate teen drama. If you ever had a super dramatic high school romance where there was just fighting, but passion, and you guys, couldn't be friends, but you didn't want to stay away from each other, I think this is Buffy and Angel right there. And then he eventually, he realizes he's a danger to her, and then he leaves at the end of the third season. And thus Angel, the series, is born. That's the start, where he goes to Los Angeles to atone for his sins and carry on the good fight that Buffy inspired in him to help people. And it becomes a giant mess from there.
A beautiful mess.
A beautiful mess, in the words of Diamond Rio. You're right. So that's really it. And again, other characters come in and out, and the cast definitely changes throughout all 5 seasons of supporting characters. But the overall through line is Angel's struggle with redemption. And Angel is a vampire, so superhuman strength and speed and 2 centuries worth of cultural and fighting experience. But he is a dork. I mean,
incredible dork.
He's this weird, awkward, antisocial dork that they constantly lampshade. They constantly, emphasize, that a guy who's been a loner for 200 years does not socialize very well, even though he's good looking and immortal and all of that. So he has many, 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 many super cringeworthy, awkward encounters with people. He's he's brooding, like you said. He's very moody. And Angel, even with a soul, let me tell you, is not always a good guy. And Bardikins, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, he's quite ruthless compared to, like, Buffy never killed people, even bad people. Like, some of the villains in some of the Buffy episodes were just evil people. And sometimes they die as a result of their own machinations, or if another monster got a hold of them. But Buffy never killed a person. In fact, that's a plot line of Buffy. It comes into the 3rd season. Angel has no such compunctions. He'll absolutely break your neck if you're a bad person, and you come into conflict with him. And so there's an edge and a ruthlessness to him that even without losing his soul, he walks a moral tightrope, and that plays a huge role in the show. So I think that's, like I said, that's kind of an introduction to Angel proper. I do want to talk a bit about the first episode that you and I watched a couple of weeks ago, or rewatched. But do you have anything you want to add as, I don't know, kind of an introduction to Angel before we get into the first episode, the pilot?
I mean, I think we talked about a lot of things, themes, mood, just a lot of different things, plot points. In that introduction. Basically, though, if you haven't watched Angel, just sit down and watch it like a normal show. You don't have to pay attention to any of that stuff. I think you'll have a good time either way, whether you're looking for some deep meaning or you're just sitting down watching a show about vampires with a little bit of humor thrown in. I think it's totally fine either way.
That's a great point. That is actually, that's something, Angel deals with a lot of great themes, and it has philosophical heft to it, but it is not one. It is not like a lot of shows in the sense that you need a marker board to keep track of. You know what I mean? It's not Game of Thrones where they throw so many characters at you and different factions that you'll never keep up, or Lost where there's time travel involved, and so you have to have you don't need. I don't want to say you don't need to pay attention to it, but it's one of those things that you can watch, even though I don't recommend you do this because it's just that great of a show. It's one of those things that you can watch while making dinner. It's one of those things
Right.
you can watch while surfing through your phone, every few minutes and stuff like that.
And still enjoy it. Yeah.
And still enjoy it and still be able to digest it all. And it's very
forsooth.
And I was about to do my Cockney British accent because that's immediately what I go to, and I need to stop that. But it's one of those things where one episode doesn't always lead into the other. It's like it has many of the episodes are standalone. They have their own self-contained story, and they may at times contribute to the greater myth arc of the season. But it's not Breaking Bad. It's not Game of Thrones. It's not a lot of shows. Westworld, It's one of those things. It's a true popcorn flick in a lot of ways, or popcorn TV show. You can just pick a random episode after you've seen it all, watch it all the way through, understand the references, and you'll be fine. So I do agree with you there. So yeah, with all that in mind, first episode of Angel is called City of.
Get it?
Yeah, and it is the pilot. So it's actually got a really good first scene. I think it's like this. It's where
But before you even get to the first scene, though, you get introduced to a very, very good opening theme song for a show.
Yes. What is the name of that? I'm gonna blank here. That theme song, though, is
I should have looked it up if I was paying attention, but I just thought of it.
No, I mean you're right. It's got there again one probably it may very well have been the best theme song for any TV show. And I just checked, and the theme the music is composed and played by a band called Darling Violetta, and it's like this metal. It's like this like hard rock introduction, but the primary instrument is the violin. And it's like this very somber. It's just really cool. You guys need to listen to it. It's a great theme.
Very catchy.
Yeah. So the iconic theme music is there, and it either leads us into or comes right after a really great first scene, the teaser scene, and it's Angel at a bar, and he seems to be drunk, and he's going on this drunken ramble about Buffy, his ex-girlfriend. Which I'm sure many people can empathize with, or at least have experienced in some capacity. And it's a really funny scene. And in the background, these guys are playing pool with this girl, and they pay for their drinks and they walk outside, and there's something off about them. And Angel seems drunk as hell, but then as soon as they pass, he snaps out of it. It was just all a farce. And he walks outside, and it turns out they're vampires, and they're going to kill this woman. And Angel does his thing, and it's got this great heroic music. And again, 90s cinematography, late 90s cinematography and choreography. So this is not Daredevil. This is not, it's not like a lot of the Netflix shows. The woman is wounded in the fight, but he defeats the vampires. He's got these cool gadgets because at the time they kind of conceived season 1 Angel as basically like Batman. He's brooding. He's an anti-hero. He always looks dramatically out over these skyscrapers, and
walks down random alleys.
Right. That they don't always have an exit.
He just has to wait for people to leave so he could walk out without them.
I guarantee you, like there's been many times he's like, no thanks needed. I'm Angel. And then he walks down a hallway, and then he realizes there's no fire escape. It's just a dead end. And he's like, oh, shit. And then he sits there, he plays Angry Birds, and he waits, 30 minutes for those people to disperse. And then he has to like run like hell. So because it's not just, you can't be seen exiting a dead end alleyway.
Ruins the mood.
Right, right. And he is definitely a drama queen in that regard.
That's right.
She's wounded in the fight, the lady he saves after he kills the vampires, and he sees the blood. And because he's been in isolation for months after leaving Buffy, he hasn't had any social interaction. He hasn't drank any human blood from victims or from blood banks. He's been on a human diet. The thirst starts to overwhelm him, and he harshly rebukes her and tells her to get the hell away from him and all that. And then he has to walk dramatically down that alleyway. And it sets the stage for the fact that Angel at this point is really cut off. Even though he's trying to save people, he's trying to redeem himself, he has no connection to the people that he saves and just to the outside world in general. So he goes back to his absurdly spacious office /
complete
basement loft. Yeah. Which it's Los Angeles, right? It's downtown Los Angeles. So like his taxes are through the roof. You know what I mean? Like he is paying a ton of money. I think they hint at sometimes that Angel is either like super poor. Like they emphasize sometimes that he didn't invest nearly enough after 2 centuries, but he never manages. Like he always, manages to find a way to get these like super crazy expensive set pieces. Makes you wonder. He may have eaten the loner.
Yeah.
But
what are they gonna do?
Yeah, right. You're late on your mortgage payment. And then
what was that? Was he
has a hairball. He has a hairball. He's like, do you have a throat losage? Here you go. Enjoy your
some
halls.
Ricola or whatever.
Yeah. But anyway,
thank
you. Yeah. He meets the first supporting character of the first season, Doyle, who is in his house for some reason. And
I bet, and I was thinking about this all day, I bet Doyle literally checked every single basement in the city until he found the one that Angel was in.
Yeah. Like every time, like he was, he did the introduction, like, so, hey there. And it's this, it's a woman. He's like, oh, my bad. And it probably happened 3 or 4 times. He's so relieved when Angel shows up. Like, oh my God.
Finally.
I got the right place. And he pulls his pants back up and it's just fine. But Angel comes back after defeating the vampires, and he has a visitor, an unexpected visitor, a guy named Doyle, played by the late Glenn Quinn, who was actually on Roseanne, the original Roseanne. He was a supporting character there. And anyway, so Doyle is a half demon. One of his parents was demon and the other was human. Anyway, he's a good demon. He's one of the rare exceptions. He is an agent of the powers that be, and as Angel says, the powers that be what? And they are set up. They're kind of in the background in the first season. They have some agents, some manifestations, but later on, essentially the cosmic forces at play in Angel and in the Buffyverse at large. You have the powers that be, which are these, ethereal, divine, entities that you never really see in person, and that they're very indirect. They're on one side of the spectrum. They're the power behind, they're like Angel's sponsor, and they're the power behind Buffy as a slayer. And then on the opposite end, you have the senior partners of Wolfram and Hart, and it's kind of this, the battle of good and evil are best embodied there. One's Yoda, the other one's the Emperor. One's Gandalf, the other one's Sauron, and Doyle is one of their agents, and he's there to essentially get Angel back on track, because Angel has some good intentions, but he's going to need a guide. He's going to need someone to provide some vision and some constructive feedback. And Doyle is this alcoholic half demon who hints that he has some things to atone for too. And his contribution to the team is he receives visions in the form of these
allegedly.
Yeah, he's just hallucinating the whole way through. He's escaped like a psychiatric ward, and he makes these big claims about being a demon. But no, he does. He gets these visions, and they come in the form of crippling migraines, and it's like a flash of a person or a group of people or a thing, or basically it's the first clue for Angel about like who needs to be saved that episode or who needs to be thwarted that episode. And they do it that way because to be direct would, you know, undercut the tension. You know, if they were like, hey, look, this is what you need to do, they're going to be at this address at this time, that would take the episode from 45 minutes down to 10. So of course there's some plot ambiguity there, and part of the episodes are usually about Angel and the crew kind of investigating and trying to interpret what the visions mean, because sometimes a person appears in the vision and they may assume that this person's the victim. Well, in fact, they're the perpetrator, or they're the cousin of the true, they're the third cousin twice removed of the actual victim, or client. And so anyway, Angel and Doyle identify a potential victim, someone the target of one of Doyle's visions, and it's a young woman who again kind of embodies that trope that we were talking about Los Angeles. She's an aspiring actress, but she's her day job is she's a waitress at a coffee shop, and she's been mixed up in things she wishes she could get out of. She's being harassed by a mysterious, wealthy Los Angeles elite businessman, and she's struggling to make ends meet. And Angel comes into her life, and they have a very awkward first encounter where he tries to get to know her, but he's like too,
I've been watching
you. Yeah, he says something like super creepy, and she pulls out mace, and then he tries to speak up at one point, and she walks right past him because he doesn't speak up loud enough, and the small talk is really cringeworthy, and all these things. It's really great, funny moments, and but anyway, throughout the episode, the two start to develop a trust, and finally Angel starts to come out of his shell. Well, spoiler alert, she dies halfway through the episode. The creepy, harassing Los Angeles elite businessman is in fact a vampire.
Named Russell.
Russell Winters. Yep. And so this is where Angel really distinguishes itself compared to a lot of other shows, especially at the time, because Angel fails to save the girl. And when I tell you that, again, Joss and the others really want to emphasize his faults, they do that right out the gate. They do it in ways that are big and small, and that's what makes the character so interesting. Is he doesn't just screw up and strategically place narrative moments. He makes awkward small talk. He's socially very inept. He, at one point when he's trying to say Tina is her name, do you remember the part where he breaks out of the elevator and she's been thrown in a car and he's trying to pursue, and he runs and does the heroic jump into his car, yes. car, and he tries to start it and it won't work, and it turns out he jumped into the wrong car, and he looks over and there's a car that looks just like his in the next spot. He's like, damn it, and has to awkwardly jump
the wrong car.
Right.
Yeah.
But he also fails in big ways, and this was a big one. He says the wrong thing, because of course he doesn't reveal that he's a vampire to Tina. He just kind of presents himself as a nice guy who happens to be in the right place at the right time. And at one point she realizes something's off with him, and she bolts, she runs from him, and she goes home. She's packing her stuff, and Russell shows up. And so he botches it. He screws it up. He says the wrong thing. He doesn't do the right thing, and it drives her away unintentionally, and it gets her killed. And he fails to save the girl. So he gets there, and the way the scene is shot, it's shot in such a way that when Russell shows up, and after they have this really sinister, really tense conversation, because Russell likes to mentally play with his food, the scene is shot in such a way that the door bursts open, and you see, I was like, oh shit, here we go. Angel and Russell about to throw down. Well, Russell's long gone, and the body is cold and pale on the floor. It's been an hour. It's been 2 hours. And
too late.
Yeah, it's too late. Much too late. Not even like he almost got, no, he was way off. He didn't come close to saving the girl. And that was a big moment in the episode, and I would argue in the series, because it sets the stage for the fact that as great and as badass as his character is, and indeed he is, this is a profoundly flawed, multidimensional protagonist, and I that was a huge, like that was a really important moment, I think, for televised fiction and certainly of the genre style. And anyway, the rest of the episode, he wants to avenge himself on Tina's murderer, Russell, and circumstances lead him to reunite with another Buffy the Vampire Slayer alumni, which was Cordelia Chase, played by the great Charisma Carpenter. She's a great character who has an incredible arc throughout the show. Goes from being a very vain, selfish, narcissistic, it girl, to being, an empathetic witness for others and a hero in her own right. She has a great arc throughout the show. And in many ways, she becomes Angel's conscience. And she takes over for this episode as the damsel in distress. And she's also an aspiring actress. She moved from Sunnydale, which is the show in Buffy. She moves to Los Angeles too, and she's kind of in the same situation Tina is. And Russell picks her as his next victim. And that brings him unwittingly back into conflict with Angel. And that great scene where Cordelia is in Russell's Russell's house. And again, she doesn't realize he's a vampire at first. And she has this great scene where, again, because he's a manipulator and a stalker and a predator, and he doesn't just kill them, he gets to know them, and kind of there seems to be a gamesmanship element to it. And she has this breakdown about her struggles and her aspirations, and she stands up and she's like, oh my God, I didn't mean to get all weepy. She's like, I'm gonna go clear up and clean up. And then she looks around. She's like, do you have any mirrors? And she notices there are no mirrors in the house. And she's like, in these heavy curtains. Hey, you're a vampire.
Yeah, just out of nowhere. And
right.
the look on his face.
Yeah, this creepy, obviously insincerely polite guy, this vampire. Like, he's totally taken off guard. And he's like, what? No, I'm not. And kind of looks away.
Well, the funny part is, like, he's usually got like that very commanding voice and everything. Yeah. But this one's just like, what?
Yeah, it's like very sheepish. He can't even look her in the eyes. Like, no, I'm not. Not even like, not right. That's crazy. What the hell are you talking about? Like, no, I'm not. You're stupid. And she just goes on this. She's like, we had our very own Hellmouth. I was in Sunnydale. I know a vampire when I'm. And then she realizes, trapped in his fortress-like home. And then, of course, he starts to approach, and then Angel shows up. And they have a great fight. Angel escapes with Cordelia. And then the finale of the episode is incredible. Russell is at his, again, he's a businessman, or he fronts as a businessman. So he's at his corporate headquarters. He's in a board meeting, and he's having a conversation with his attorney, Lindsay McDonald, played by Christian Kane, who becomes a recurring character. And Lindsay is an attorney with Wolfram and Hart, setting the stage from the very first episode of the conflict with Angel. Angel bursts into the boardroom. Russell doesn't rise from his chair. He just kind of turns and faces him. And he says, look, Angel, we're civilized people. We don't have to go around fighting each other. I know you're new here. I've been here a while, so take it from me. I pay my taxes. I don't make waves. And in return, I can do whatever I want. And Angel, who is still pissed off about Tina's death and the attempted murder of Cordelia, he nods and he leans down. He puts his shoe on his foot on Russell's chair. And he goes, can you fly? And then he kicks Russell out a window into broad daylight, and Russell falls down like 40 stories and bursts into flames on his way down. And it's epic and it's funny. And then Angel says, guess not. And then he takes the Wolfram and Hart business card that he was given by Lindsay as kind of a threat of bluster, like, we'll defend our client no matter what. He puts it back into Lindsay's coat pocket and pats his coat pocket and walks out the door. Great scene. And they're again really interesting because it wasn't this epic combat. They had a brief fight in one of the previous scenes, and then Angel just goes into the lion's den and kicks the guy out a window. Great one-liner, great shot, and it sets the stage for the future conflict because Lindsay's pissed, but he makes the phone call and informs the rest of the staff at Wolfram and Hart that, quote, they have a new player in town. And the episode ends with Angel going back to Doyle and Cordelia. And, they kind of have the post-mortem. Cordelia essentially hires herself, which is a great Cordelia moment. She's like, look, you've got Doyle providing you the visions. You need someone to help run the office because you're essentially a private investigator now. And, we'll just charge just enough to pay my salary, and like all these things. And she just asserts herself. And, Angel's happy to accept, and thus the core Angel Investigations with Angel, Doyle, and Cordelia is formed. And then, of course, we have that awkward scene right before the credits. Do you remember when Doyle's like, so are you game? And then it instantly cuts to Angel walking up on a skyscraper, looking down, and then jumping off, and you hear a voiceover go, I'm game. And it's just like this random, and the music's like swelling, and it's like this epic scene. But in context, you're like, this makes no sense. Did he
just jump off of a
right? Someone's like, there's stairs right there. And even like, did he answer the question first, and then this was kind of like what he did after, or did Doyle ask the question, "Are you game?"
And he just Angel walked out of the room.
Well, he had to put on his coat first, like because he was so like, "Are you game?" Hang on. He puts on his jacket and takes 10 minutes to walk up, a flight of stairs all the way to the top of the building, and then go, I'm game. And Doyle can't hear him because Doyle's still inside. Like
Doyle's like, where did he go?
Like, are you gonna tell me if you're game or not? Come on, man. But it was a great episode. A really good pilot. And it sets the stage, I think, pretty well for what's to come.
Definitely. I totally agree. I thought it was a good episode, and it was good. It was good rewatching it again. It's been a while, several years since I rewatched that episode, so it was good to see all of the stuff. The humor thrown throughout with Doyle and Angel.
You remember that part where one of my favorite lines is when at one point when Doyle and Angel are walking down the street, and Doyle's like, listen, people, it's not just enough to save lives. People need compassion. They need empathy. You need to reach out and let them know you care. And then that homeless person on the street's like, do you have any spare change? And without even changing a beat, he's like, get a job, you lazy sow. And, the irony in the use of the humor is hilarious. And you're right. The humor is really great between he and Angel.
Yeah, I agree. But, overall, I have to say that Doyle's probably not one of my favorite characters in the show. I'm just not the biggest fan of Doyle. He didn't.
No, nor mine. Nor mine. He doesn't stay very long either. I think Doyle has a very abrupt arc with Angel, and he's not a bad character. He's just when you compare him to what comes, he doesn't really stand out in comparison.
Yep, I totally agree with you there.
Any things other than Doyle's, I guess I won't say inadequacies, but the fact that he's not as interesting a character as the other supporting characters that come. Do you have any major complaints about the episode?
Major complaints? I don't think so. I mean, it's a pilot. So what happens in the pilots in the first episodes is that they're still trying to figure out what they want to do with a lot of things. And so it's kind of like a test, right?
Mm-hmm.
What will people respond to? How does this look on the screen? Things like that. So you could get really nitpicky about things, and then they never come back to them again in any other episode or something. You know what I'm saying? So nothing really big stands out for me.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I mean, I'm not going to say this is the greatest episode of all time, but there are no obvious major flaws. And again, even the Doyle thing. Doyle's an interesting character. Doyle's a funny character. Just when you compare Doyle to the characters that come later in the show, um, he doesn't he doesn't rise to the occasion.
Mm-hmm.
And other than that, it's just like nitpicky. There are elements about the show that are dated. Again, the choreography, the fashion, definitely.
Well,
But
fashion always changes, so.
right, right.
Mm-hmm.
But the Hawaiian shirts with the dress slacks and the wife beaters and the bowling shirts that remind me of Two and a Half Men, Charlie Sheen. But again, like you can't, to your point, you can't really nitpick that because that constantly changes. But yeah, I think overall, a very tight episode. It introduces Angel competently. It sets up a lot of the elements of the show. The fact that this is a very interesting character who's very flawed and is very committed to his mission, and he needs help along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, overall, I mean, for me, it's a B plus, A minus episode. Um, doesn't reach the heights of certain episodes that follow it, but again, no obvious flaws. And pilots have a lot to do. To your point, I mean, there's a lot riding on a pilot. If you have a lackluster, uninteresting first episode, you'll never get to the second one.
That's true. Someone has to approve it. So a
Right,
lot of the times they're written for that purpose, right?
right,
And you also don't want to spend 400 hours working on a single episode either. So you may not have the money to do that yet. uh, you see that a lot with animations, right? The pilot episodes a lot of the times are lower quality, like animation wise.
yeah,
You just don't have the resources until you get brought in to the fold.
right, right.
So.
You're making a sales pitch, in
Mm-hmm.
a way with your first episode. And I think by that, I mean, if that's the case, Angel is something I would buy. And I did repeatedly. And that was before the age of Netflix where you had to go out and buy this, the DVDs, and it was like
Yeah. Do you
60
still have
bucks.
those
I do.
those fold out DVD cases that have like
I
7 discs in it?
Yes, I do. Yes, as a matter of fact, I do. I mean, you have to blow the dust off them, but they are there and they unfurl dramatically. And they, of course, have the dramatic main menu thing, right? Because there was always like this weird pre-animation leading into the main menu. It just doesn't pop up like that. It's so funny. Youngsters these days just have no idea.
Yeah.
We had to sit through 10 minutes of opening animation to get through the menu to press play.
And that was
Uh,
for everything, all DVDs pretty much ever. They always had
yes.
that they had the menu with all the stuff, but there was always some special thing they decided to add and play with because DVD menus were kind of new at the time.
Right.
And it
Right.
was just weird, and you couldn't skip anything. It wouldn't let you skip anything.
No. And so if you selected the wrong damn episode, you had to go back through like 5 minutes worth of animation to select the correct episode. But yeah, I do still have them. But yeah, that's the first season, or excuse me, first episode of Angel and an introduction to it. I plan for us to delve or to dive more deeply, excuse me, into Angel. It probably won't be an every episode thing, but just for me, what are the standout episodes? So I considered, and I'm still kicking around, maybe since we talked about the first episode, maybe we do a mid-season thing and then a season finale thing. But right now I'm leaning more towards like standout episodes. But I highly encourage every single one of you, and again, I don't want to speak for Bardikins, but I'm confident that he would agree. If you guys are looking, if you guys and gals are looking for something to binge this very tense season of our lives, I think that you can't go wrong with Angel. I think Angel is something that you'd be very, very pleased having selected.
Sure, totally agree. You can't go wrong with it. It's there if you want to look, look for in-depth meaning. It's there if you just want some popcorn, popcorn show to watch as well. There's something for everybody in it, I think. So,
Yeah. All right. Well, that's all I have. And I think that's all you have, Bardikins.
yep, I'm good.
Okay. Well, everyone, we really appreciate again the support. We hope to put out and ratchet up the content, give you more diverse content. Is there anything you want to mention about stuff that's coming down the pike? You do plan on covering a different game as well, right?
What are you talking about? I'm kidding. See, I'm funny. No, I'm working on some games. next in the line is Majesty 2 by, I don't remember the actual developer, but it was published by Paradox and is the last in the Majesty series, as far as I know. So that'll be coming up pretty soon.
Awesome. Sounds good. All right, everybody. Well, again, we appreciate your support. If you are interested in the content we produce, we feel free. We encourage you to like, subscribe, and do anything that indicates a positive affirmation of what we have. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, criticisms, we'd love that too. We love the dialogue. There's plenty about the stuff that we're covering to discuss. So with that in mind, I guess this is Fictionology out. Gideon signing off.
Thank you guys. See you on the next one.